This is an excerpt from a longer video lesson about how to write the 6 main text types for IGCSE English. If you would like to watch the full video lesson, which is 1 hour and 15 minutes long, you'll find it linked below. Get the worksheet, PowerPoint, and even take a review quiz, as well as find more exclusive content to help you with your exams on my website. Whether you're a teacher or a student, you'll find something over there that can help you. Now, all of the text types are based on this story right here. I'll flash it up on the screen. If you're not familiar, feel free to pause and read, but otherwise, let's get into it. Let's take a look at speeches now. Here is our speech prompt. Imagine you are Miss Salmon. After quitting teaching, you give a speech at a teachers' conference about your experience and the need to improve working conditions for teachers. Write the words of the speech. So, what is your voice, audience, register, purpose, and format? What is your verb? So voice then, we are Miss Salmon. So we are a mid-30s female teacher, right? So that's me. Not mid-30s, yeah. Okay, so therefore we're going to be semi-formal? I mean, it depends on her personality. We haven't got a sense of it yet. But certainly she wouldn't be using lots and lots of slang. She wouldn't be swearing and so on and so forth. Who is her audience? She's talking at a teachers' conference. So she's talking to other teachers. So that's our audience. Therefore, her register would definitely be, I think, slightly more formal than she would normally speak. She would be respectful. And she is someone who's doing the same job as them. So she might have some inside jokes and try to create a sense of we're all in this together. I understand you, you understand me because we do the same job or did the same job. The purpose then is to talk about the need to improve working conditions. So it might be persuasive and informative. And what is the format? Well, you are writing a speech. Now for speech writing, probably you guys might think of people like this: John F. Kennedy, Greta Thunberg, Martin Luther King. But Cambridge will not ask you to write a political speech. Usually the speeches on Cambridge are more like a talk rather than being like very, very emotive. So usually the purpose is more to inform than to persuade. Persuade might be a secondary purpose, but your main purpose will be to inform, like in this task. Now, remember that a speech is a spoken form. You're giving a speech using your mouth to a live audience. So you need to create that sense of audience by talking to them. In other words, you need to address your audience and reference them throughout your speech. So you can even open your speech with phrases like these. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today. Hello everyone, and welcome to my talk about blah blah blah. I'm so pleased to see such bright and smiling faces here to learn more about blah blah blah. Because of this, it's really useful to think about your pronouns. So you should speak directly to your audience to be more persuasive. So you could use collective pronouns like we, our, us, and personal pronouns like you, your, and yours. Speeches are often a good opportunity to use rhetorical questions. A reminder that a rhetorical question is a question that doesn't require an answer. It's a persuasive technique, and its purpose is to make your audience think about something, to ponder the topic, or to suggest that the answer to your question is so obvious it doesn't need a response. Like, we can all agree on this, right? For example, don't you love studying English? That's rhetorical because the answer is so obvious, it's yes. Some examples here. Do you think it's right to watch our children starve while the rich grow fatter in their mansions? What will you do to help your community? What will you tell your children in years to come? So these rhetorical questions here, suggesting clearly the answer is no, it's not okay to watch children starve while other people grow rich. And also the second one, to make the reader think, genuinely, what will you tell your children about what you did to help in this situation? Probably because the speaker is assuming the audience isn't doing enough, they want them to do more. So they want them to think, what will I tell my children? I will have to tell them I did nothing, feel ashamed. Maybe I should do more. In a speech, you can also use some repetition, which is where you repeat words or phrases for emphasis. Because remember, a speech is supposed to be spoken out loud, and so when we repeat things, it sounds good. An example from Martin Luther King: I have a dream that one day all people will be equal. I have a dream that one day our society can heal itself. And my dream, our dream, we can only achieve this dream if we dream together as one, strive together as one united force. So we have the repetition of I have a dream and just dream more generally, and repetition of as one, right? Because it sounds good. Maybe it doesn't sound as good, but it definitely doesn't sound as good when I read it as Martin Luther King, but you get the idea. And similarly, we can also use some emotive language, so emotional and powerful language, to try and create a response in the reader. To do this, really think about your vocabulary choices. Example, do you think it's right to watch our children starve while the rich grow fatter in their mansions? Should we watch as innocents wither and die, their mouths empty, their souls abandoned by this very society that was charged to protect them? So some emotive language in here, children starving, they are innocents, they are withering, they are dying, their mouths are empty, they've been abandoned, their souls, and that we as a society were supposed to protect them. So being quite dramatic and emotional in the language choices here. Here are some useful phrases for speeches. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share. Let's take a moment to fellow professionals, enthusiasts, citizens, I'm here to discuss. I want to talk to you about. Each of you plays a crucial role in. Everyone in this room knows the importance of. I'm speaking to you today because. Think about this. Let's consider how this affects each and every one of us. As individuals who care deeply about, I know many of you may have experienced. For those of you who've been through, to the future leaders and innovators in this room, in your daily lives you might have encountered. As we gather here, I want you to reflect on. Now let me ask you, I'm sure you can relate to. It's a privilege to be speaking to such an attentive group. Remember that together we can. So a common theme here is lots of you and lots of us, right? So you see that the whole way through these speeches. Now let's take a look at my speech exemplar, which remember is Miss Salmon talking to a group of teachers at a teachers' conference. Ladies and gentlemen, educators of the UK and esteemed colleagues, thank you for allowing me to address you today. I stand before you not as a cautionary tale, but as a fellow educator, sharing a pivotal moment that changed the course of my career. On one fateful day at Elmwood High School, I found myself at a crossroads, where the challenges I faced in my Year 11 English class seemed insurmountable. An impending classroom observation weighed heavily on my shoulders, and the lack of control over challenging classes had me feeling like a captain steering a ship caught in a storm. In my quest to create an environment of learning and growth, I made a choice that, in hindsight, I recognise as both desperate and misguided. I'm sure many of you here today know the heart-pounding dread that accompanies an observation, but that day I think I transcended heart-pounding and skipped straight to beautiful madness. I walked out of my classroom and set off the fire alarm. So beginning straight away then with ladies and gentlemen, and recognising that they are also teachers. She calls them colleagues, like workmates. So we've definitely got a sense of audience. And she's being very polite. So she's being formal, polite, and inclusive. Like we all understand because we've all done the same job. She's addressing them directly using you. And she calls herself a fellow educator because she's talking to a room full of students. Also notice here she addresses them. She's trying to get some sympathy, really. I'm sure many of you here today know the heart-pounding dread that accompanies an observation. Like, you guys know how stressful it is, so, like, give me some empathy, essentially. Now, please do not mistake me. At that moment, I didn't want either chaos or a simple escape. I just wanted one moment of peace, and that would have been enough. That might tell you something about what my mental state was. Because you see, it wasn't this one observation or this one class. No, as educators, you all know that the stresses of teaching cannot be quantified in single measures. The stress, workload, and pressure were unrelenting. 6 periods a day, 5 days a week, plus meetings, plus duties, plus extracurricular activities, plus trips, plus parents' evenings, plus open evenings, plus attempting to improve my teaching enough to get a promotion, because I certainly couldn't afford a decent house and a teacher's salary, so I'd have to climb the greasy pole. No. At that moment, I just needed 10 seconds with a wailing fire alarm bell to allow myself to breathe for the first time in 12 months. So here, getting into the argument about mental health, workload, stress, basically it was all too much that this was the most relaxed she had been in the last year. Pulling the fire alarm was the most relaxing moment for Miss Salmon's life, according to her. And we're seeing in this paragraph here, she's directly addressing her audience. Please do not mistake me. She's begging them to kind of understand her. And again, we've got lots of you the whole way through this too. And because you see, but then we've also got some persuasive techniques. We've got this repetition, right? The plus, 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 to kind of emphasize how many things teachers have to do, all piling up and up and up. And a sense of irony too, that the most quiet and relaxation she's getting is with this wailing fire alarm, which should really tell you, the reader and the audience, just how stressed Miss Salmon was. My dear colleagues, this experience has taught me the invaluable lesson that we are people first, educators second. It's about recognising when we need help and recognising when our jobs become untenable. I loved my students. I loved teaching, but somewhere in that classroom I forgot how to breathe. And the great irony is that many would describe what I did as a false alarm. True, in terms of fires, but in terms of my mental health, it was anything but. I needed that moment to be honest with myself, that my time as a teacher had to end. So here the argument, okay, it was a false alarm for a fire, but it wasn't a false alarm. Like, I pulled that because I needed help. I did need help. And so I quit. Don't worry, I owned up first. My apologies to Mark Chang, who initially got the blame for my actions. But yes, I handed in my resignation on that same day. Now I work as a mental health advocate for those in the education sector, trying to find ways to keep passionate teachers in the classroom and reassuring those on the verge of setting off the alarm that it's okay to say when enough is enough. Thank you for being a fantastic audience. Take care of yourselves. So here we have got, again, addressing the audience, my dear colleagues, and thank you for being a fantastic audience. Take care of yourselves. And also like this kind of conversational tone here with don't worry, like you're teachers, so I know you're going to be annoyed at me that a student took the blame. I owned up. So she's recognizing the audience there. Again, we've got some repetition. I loved my students. I loved teaching. And overall, just creating this emotive and passionate tone without being informal in any way. You will see that there is no slang and the tone is pretty formal the whole way throughout. But that's because of our warmth, right? Because it's a teacher talking at a teacher's conference in a professional context, of course this is going to be a more formal talk. If you liked this video lesson and you want more content like this, if you want PowerPoints, worksheets, quizzes, and lots of different resources to help you with your studies, head on over to talkly.co.uk where you'll find more materials like this for teachers and students. Thank you so much for your attention today, and I'll see you there.